Ladies and gentlemen, it's in my possession, the Nike Alphafly 3. Is this the next best race day shoe, or is this a total flop? Let's talk about it. So before we get into the video, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're already subscribed, watching the content, thanks so much. Love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Strava for all sorts of other updates and things like that. So without further ado, let's begin. Specs of the shoe up here. And as I've discussed in a previous video that I had about the Nike Pegasus Turbo Plus, I see that there is a return in quality, or an attempt at the very least, I'll use that very loosely, at Nike trying to make a race day product that is decent. Well, I guess I'll take that back. There is very decent product that has come out historically, but the quality of said product has been debatable. I think the market has agreed that it's been tricky, it's not been great. So with the Alphafly 3, I'm giving it another chance here, in terms of giving Nike a chance here, so that's why we're kind of talking about this thing. So yeah, without further ado, specs very resemblant, or very close to the Vaporfly Next% 2, a little bit of the 1, not so much the 3. We're talking 7.2 ounces in my size, 8.5, a 40mm heel, 32mm forefoot, 8mm offset in terms of the stack height, which is right about the exact same specs, almost, as the Nike Vaporfly Next% 2, which, if I recall correctly, is a vast improvement against the Alphafly 1 in terms of weight. Now, in terms of offset, there's obviously a change there. We can discuss that at a different time, but we're kind of focusing more on just like this shoe in general. So, again, other things to consider, like massive stack of heel foam. It's noticeable while you're standing in it that the heel does sink, and this 8mm offset that would have otherwise existed almost turns into like that 5-6 kind of range, just because of how much you sink. It doesn't create like a negative offset as you would probably experience in something like an A6 Metaspeed Sky or whatnot, but it does sink. It goes a little bit comfortable, as you can probably see from the wrinkle areas of the shoe here. So speaking of some of the additional specs, let's check out the outsoles of the shoe just to kind of show you what I've done in about 10 miles of running at this point. So that's what's going on in my left foot. This is what's going on in the right foot. And you might notice something just right off the rip, I guess, early on. Where was it? It's up here in the tip of the area of the shoe. So again, my usual culprit spot with the lugs on the shoe that sort of protrude on the exterior toe box area. They're starting to kind of burn off a little bit here. It's sort of expected. It's okay. I know that my use with the shoe is going to be very limited to my long key workouts and marathon race days. So I've only done 2 particular runs in this shoe. One was just kind of the break-in run. Today I did a tempo run, about a 10K, just to make sure the shoe was up to pace, and then sometime by the end of this weekend or somewhere in the middle of next week, I'm going to have to run my 20-mile run to once and for all answer the question if I'm going to have a good time during the Chicago Marathon, right? So anyways, this is a shoe that's pretty much on my radar for that race. It's not 100% confirmed. I do have to run it over 10 miles to know if I'm good about it, and then we'll do the 20 to, you know, determine if it's going to be that race day material. So without any tangents, of course. So other things there, again, we do have the 2 Air Zoom pods, or the, Air Zoom pods. Always a tricky piece to the shoe, just because we know they pop historically. At least they have more in the Tempo Next%. In my case, if one pops, it really kind of puts the rest of the shoe in a huge damper, and it causes, I would say, a 50% increase in running injury, as I have experienced with my right ankle twice now, and one time with my knee on my right foot, I believe it was. I don't even remember which one it was, but that was last year, and it was not good. So that's just something to consider. Again, the Air Zoom Pod works in tandem with a carbon plate that is sandwiched between 2 pieces of ZoomX foam, as we've discussed. Huge sandwich stack of ZoomX. I like the huge stack, even if it's like deceptively massive, but we know it's only 40mm, so obviously it's race legal. Anything above 40mm, we get into some trouble. So that's kind of just some explanation to the specs. And yeah, that's kind of nice. On the top, I don't think Nike's changed the formula too much in terms of materials used. In terms of the tie and all that, we have major improvements from the 2, in my opinion. So we are using that Atom Knit material, which is like that fly knit that's heat treated to have this kind of shiny looking design to it, but it's also toughened as a result. So there's kind of a mix of different processes in the design of this, and it's just supposed to be more rigid, more resilient, and just kind of keep the shoe a little bit more streamlined than something like Flyknit, which expands a little bit, right? So that's just something nice. Our shoelace area resembles more of the original Alphafly, which was the right move. As in the Alphafly 2, there was a little bit too much going on. It was a little bit busy, and we actually had a piece of textile in the Nike logo underneath the shoe that was giving you blisters on your pinky toe, if I recall correctly. It was a textile piece there, and it was not good. And a lot of people just said, hey, buy a smaller or buy a bigger shoe. And I'm like, why don't we just stay true to size? Like, I'm not going to size up or size down over a textile piece that's not supposed to be rubbing against the top of your foot. That's ridiculous. So it's not me negotiating with terrorists, as I would say. It's put the shoe design in a proper place, right? Like, build a darn good shoe. Don't build a brick, if I would say. So in this case, good work, Nike. You didn't put brick pieces on the shoe so far as I'm aware. And yeah, that's just kind of one of the improvements I've saw from last year's model. And again, I think the lips of the shoe, or the lip and the heel guard, are good, not necessarily improvements. It's kind of going back to the first Alphafly iteration, just keeping it a little bit loose, not too tight, I would say, not too crazy, so I'm okay with that. Again, this kind of runs into an issue with the way the shoe tightens, I would say, in terms of heel lock. So what I've noticed, at least in like a thinner sock that's available, is that you will have a little bit of heel, not so much rubbing, but you will have to struggle a little bit more with getting the shoe tightened down. It is a simple fix. You just need to know and remind yourself to do it every time you lace this thing, right? So if it is loose, it's going to be a tricky ride for the rest of the day, just because you will have a little bit of movement there. So yeah, just make sure with how soft this heel and the ring of the shoe is for your ankle, and the lack of ankle guard, that you lock it down as best as you can. Other than that, the other piece that was tricky with the shoe is that in the toe box area, it does run a smidgen tight. Make sure you cut your toenails, otherwise you're going to have a bad time, as you'll probably see. Can we even see it on the shoes now? I wonder if in the lighting, it might be like very faint. I did blast one of my toes and it did pop, and I was bleeding, so oh, I think I can see it right here. So right there, I have a little bit of blood from my shoe, just from toenails smacking the toe box of this shoe, just because they were not tied down properly. Kind of my mistake, but again, should be something that could be avoidable outside of user error. That's just my opinion, but again, it's fine, you know, like, I'll take care of my feet. The shoe should take care of my feet if I make sure I got all the proper hygiene done there, right? So I'll give that one to Nike. Not totally my fault, right? Or not totally their fault. Sorry. But okay. Other than that, let's talk about the ride. So a couple of months ago, people were telling me that the shoe had like a clunky kind of a ride, that they weren't really happy with it. And there was things to it that could still be better. Now, can the shoe always be better? Of course, right? In terms of being clunky, it doesn't feel clunky the way I've imagined, or like how I perceived the definition of that. What does feel weird at first is if you walk in the shoe, you do feel these AirPod, like, it feels like a figure 8 when you're walking with the ball of your foot. You do feel this area fairly early on, which tells me that the carbon plate might be a little bit thinner in this area, or it's just the design of the shoe is to keep this area much more secured, and as a result, you'll feel more on the ball of your foot. That's possible. Hard to say, but once you're running and once you're in a flow, you don't feel like the AirPod figure 8 section of the shoe so much. I think at all. I think once you're kind of in the groove, it's pretty good, I would say. In fact, I did enjoy this ride a lot. One of the things with this shoe that I do, of course, is because it is this state-of-the-art from Nike kind of race day shoe, you do want to tone it back if you're not trying to go like maximum or tempo threshold kind of paces. So holding back in this shoe is nice, even when you're trying to get that mid-foot strike, like the foam that's associated with the shoe and the protections on the heel with these two pads, and just the rubber that's associated keeps you for a comfortable ride when you want to go slow. Now, when you want to go fast, there's two things to consider, right? One, because of the stack height offset and the way the shoe's kind of arching, in this forefoot area, you may find yourself leaning more in with that kind of toe to forefoot strike for the shoe. So just be conscious if you're trying to get that midfoot or more of that like air zoom pod area strike to kind of tone it back a little bit, or realize it and just try to land more like you're doing a heel strike, and then naturally your shoe's just going to come down and smack the air pod area and not like strike this area and kind of dig into the ground. It's hard to describe. I think it's better to describe when I do downhill running, right? So major thing to consider is this shoe will pull you down if you're running downhills, okay? Just because, again, you're angled down already. The shoe's offset already has you on this high heel, and you're just drilling into the ground. So if you let the shoe just kind of carry you down the hill, you're going to go very fast. You're going to have a huge turnover. And if you're used to downhill running, great. If you're like me and want to take it a little bit more conservatively on a downhill, you want to have some control and have your arms out and just kind of float across, it is kind of tricky because the shoe really wants to pull you down the hill, right? Up the hill, not so much, but that's just gravity at its finest, right? So in terms of ride, I like it. It's close to the Alphafly 1, which was a crazy ride to begin with in any sort of race day shoe. Other things to consider there is that, again, this does have a unique feel. It's not supposed to resemble the Nike Vaporfly in any sort of way. The Tempo Next Percent, not so much, because the Tempo Next Percent is a crazy shoe. But then, in terms of just being like a standalone Alphafly, my quick summary opinion here is that it is way better than the Alphafly 2. Too soon to tell if it's going to be better than the Alphafly 1, but good enough that if you've never owned an Alphafly in your life, this is a pretty decent race day shoe. And for its price tag, which I believe was $275 or $285, depending on where you get it from, it better be a damn good racing shoe. So I have to conserve this thing as much as I can, obviously, because I don't want to keep spending money on a race day shoe that is going to be hard to commit into the Chicago Marathon. So again, I'm not 100% sold that this is going to be that shoe. I do have to put it through the gauntlet of a long run and see what kind of damage I do to it, what kind of damage is done to my feet after said run. So it's a close contender. It is very good. I think I could trust a company when they're like, hey, we built this marathon shoe that has at least 2 additional generations of lineage used behind it to have a good race day, that I've used a lineage once for race day and overall had an okay time in it, just because the weather was disgusting in the 2021 Chicago Marathon. I digress. Point is, I think there's enough going on here where it should be good enough for a marathon. It should be good enough for a PB. Not that I will run a PB this year, but I will damn try. So, again, too soon to tell, but I think as a shoe overall and as a shoe that you could use for your everyday race day stuff or your race day for all sorts of distances, I think it's a good pick. There's nothing out on this shoe that stands out that bothers me too much. So, if you agree or disagree with the assessment, let me know in the comments below. Again, I only have about 10 miles in this, so it's hard to give you a full breakdown until I do my 20-miler and kind of get a real grasp of what this shoe is supposed to do. So we still have time for that, but again, just let me know if you've had this shoe for a while, what you think about it, if you like it, hate it, if you think there's improvements that can be done, just let me know. Let's talk about it. So I will leave this here. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.